Welcome to the Master Dealmaker's Secrets podcast. And now, here's sales growth strategist, John Blake.
Welcome to Master Dealmaker's Secrets podcast. I am John Blake. This is episode number 4, and today I am particularly excited because we are going to be talking to internationally renowned marketer and business person, Kerwin Rae. I'm going to give you a little bit more of background about Kerwin in a minute, but before I do that, if you have got lead flow in your business and you are looking to convert more of those leads into paying clients, head over to johnblakeaudio.com and get your audio training where I show you the precise strategy to double your sales with your existing lead flow. So this is the exact same strategy that I start my high ticket 12-month clients on, and it's designed to give you a really, really fast return on your efforts. So if you put this in place, it'll give you consistent results. And once it's in place, it'll keep working for you. So head over to johnblakeaudio.com. You'll not only get the audio training that goes for about 15 minutes, really straight to the point, no fluff, but you'll also get the PDF guide with the exact email templates, the exact phone scripts, and exactly when to call and when to email over an 8-week period to give you the best results possible. So head over to johnblakeaudio.com and grab that now, and you'll find that will really, really work well for you. Welcome to Master Dealmaker Secrets. And today I'm particularly pumped because I've got Kerwin Rae on the show. Now, Kerwin Rae is a businessman, he's an entrepreneur, an investor, and an international speaker. As one of Australia's leading business strategists for over a decade, he's consulted in 11 countries, over 154 different industries, and taught over 100,000 people in the world over his seminars and workshops to date generating in excess of $250 million. So unlike other coaches, consultants, or seminars that provide the best pieces to a puzzle, Kerwin has a blueprint for success, and he has specialised in building businesses for over 15 years, generating almost $250 million in new business for clients. So I'm particularly excited to have Kerwin on the show. Good morning, mate. How you going?
Good morning, John. Great to be here, mate. I feel like I should float in on a cloud after that introduction.
Well, we are on the interweb cloud, so it's all good.
Hello, Internet. Good to see you.
Mate, anything else that you wanted to add in terms of your background?
No, mate. Look, I'm a husband to a beautiful wife, Kristen, who happens to be a Canadian Canuck, and a father to an incredible 18-month-old little boy. And I'm just a normal guy, mate. I'm just a normal guy.
Awesome.
But the only difference being is I failed every subject from year 1 all the way through to year 12. I've nearly killed myself at least 6 times, 7 times now, I should say, and I'm still here. So, yeah.
If you like a cat, you've got a couple of lives left.
Exactly. Don't try that at home, kids.
No. Classic. Awesome. So, mate, we'll get stuck straight into it. As you know, that the show is all about deconstructing big deals. So, you know, and people's idea of a big deal might be different. Everyone's idea of a big deal might be different, but that's essentially the overarching theme of the program. So, mate, tell me about the biggest deal of your career. Walk us through that.
Oh, mate, as I was saying in the pre-show, when we were just having a bit of a chat, the pre-show chat, as it's called in the professional realms, yes. Mate, it's a struggle for me to think about. I've done so many great deals, and I suppose if you're trying to use big in the term of measurement, are you talking big in terms of financial or big in terms of satisfaction?
Mate, it can be either. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. I mean, okay. Like there's been all sorts of different responses to that question, but whatever jumps out for you, really.
Well, the biggest deal I ever did was when I did financially, which also was probably very pivotal in the balance of my career so far. I built a couple of businesses that had failed very successfully, gone screaming past zero, put myself in an enormous amount of debt. I then went and worked for a guy called Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and was very, very critical in turning that company around in Australasia. They were running at a huge loss. They weren't really doing any, basic marketing or direct marketing and sales strategies. And so, I basically instituted a bit of stuff there, went out on my own again and started a consultancy. And in the first 12 months, I did reasonably well. But then I picked up a really significant client. And the client that I picked up at the time was doing about $400,000 a year. And this was a JV partnership. So it was very much structured like a partnership, but it was a joint venture. But it wasn't actually my business. I just had a piece of I had equity in the profit, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And in a period of 18 months, we managed to take the turnover from 400,000 to about 8 million.
Wow.
And in the process, we built probably one of the largest networks of business coaches in Australia at the time.
Awesome.
And we did it very, very quickly. We also expanded to 5 countries during that period. And I did in excess of about, at that time, I think 350 transactions over that 18-month period. So it was a hell of a ride.
That's massive. And are we allowed to talk about the actual business name? Which one it was?
Yeah, of course. It was called the Better Business Institute. It was actually founded by a guy called Peter Sun.
Yes, I remember that one. Yeah.
You probably will.
I do.
And everyone's got mixed and varied memories of the business itself. And for a time, it was a tremendous business. He partnered with another guy called Adam Hudson. I
remember that name too.
Yes, you would. That's going back deep into the darkness of the Australian seminar history. Look, they had a great business. They had a great model. And, myself and my business partner, Dean Cowley, we basically plugged on the marketing and the sales component to it. They had a great product, which is basically teaching people how to become business coaches or consultants. Mm-hmm. And they had, 2 options to do that, either through the sale of products, video. I think it was at the time we had videos, actual VHS videos.
Yep.
We just introduced DVDs at that point in the market, books, tapes, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Or at the same time, we supported them with the education and the training to actually become, consultants or coaches independent of, becoming a product salesperson per se. And when, that business gave birth to a lot of very successful people. Cat Media was one of the businesses that came out of that became very successful from Fat Blaster, and they were sold, I think, from memory, 42 million to Westpac. John Dion, who now has Knowledge Source,
yep.
Which he runs a $25 to $30 million business. And, I basically sprung out of that because the way that I got involved, I actually bought a license and became very successful very quickly. And then Peter's son actually approached me and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, I'm just doing what it says in the videos, Pete. And he goes, "Well, how about you come on board and help me too?" And I did, and that's where myself and my business partner, Dean, plugged in basically a marketing funnel at the front end and a sales process at the back end that had stellar results.
Fantastic. So what were some of the blockages that you faced? I mean, that's a massive amount of growth in 18 months. I mean, because there's not only the top line revenue part of it, but then there's the sales support and administrative, part of it. So, what were some of the biggest blockages or challenges that you faced along that road?
Mate, look, you probably hit some of them right there. Like, it was really, client support, customer support, and the blockages that we had is we had a great, myself and my partner Dino, we managed the marketing and the sales.
Yep.
But we only had a very, I wouldn't say we had a small percentage of the pie. We had a reasonable percentage of the pie. But the way the deal was structured, all of the costs came out of our side. So any marketing costs came out of our side, any sales costs, travel costs. So it was, in essence, although a joint venture, it was a business, it was very much a business partnership arrangement whereby we bore all the risks. So it was very intelligent for Peter and Adam, but it was, it was a highly risky move for myself and for Dino because, we basically bore all the risk. And the challenge that we had was trying to actually, initiate the support systems that were required to help more people become more successful. Because at the time it was really interesting. We roughly had about a 5% success rate of people that bought the license that became successful. And now, what was really interesting is this isn't something that we hid. In fact, we actually utilized this disadvantage and actually created an advantage of it in the deal making process, whereby, if people would sit down and they were interested in pursuing the opportunity, they'd say, "Well, what is the success rate?" And we'll say, "Well, at best about 5%. And people look shocked. They're like, "Well, I can't believe you're telling us that." And we'll say, "Well, the reality is 95% of people fail in this business. Would you like to know why?" And they'd say, "Yeah, of course." They say, "Well, the reason that 95% fail is because they don't follow the systems and processes as we ask them and as we show them how to do. The 5% that do follow are the ones that are successful. So all I need to ask you is, do you know how to follow a system?" And of course, everybody wants to be in the 5%. And you say, are you in the 5% that can follow directions and follow a system? And, everyone always wanted to see themselves in the 5%. I say, yeah, absolutely. And so, well, then you don't have to worry about that. Now, that was actually the truth. That's not, that wasn't just spin, but that's a great example in the deal-making situation of how do you take your greatest disadvantage and actually turn it into your greatest advantage. And that was, that was something that we did very well. And, I was never satisfied with that success statistic. And so the biggest blockage for me was trying to get the owners of the business, which was Peter and Adam, to see that we needed a lot more support. And, there were a lot of, at the time, had a huge ego at the time. And, there was a lot of other egos in the business at the time as well. And,
no, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. That can't be true. Not in the seminar business.
Not in the seminar business. And when you put four very, large personalities in a business together, you get conflict. And what's interesting is when you put four very large personalities together that have egos in a business that are all very person developed, you get a lot of passive aggressive conflict because everyone's trying to maintain their composure through the process.
I can just imagine knowing, having an understanding of all of the people that you're describing.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And look, everyone was on their own journey. Pete's going on to do other things now. Adam's gone on to do other things now. Dean's gone on to do other things now. I've gone on to do other things now. And all of us have taken something from that. I know there's a few people that I've mentioned are a little bit bitter and twisted that still haven't probably fully resolved, that part of their life. But for me, I feel very blessed. Peter's an interesting character. Once upon a time, he was the J. Abrahams of Australia. And he was the J. Abrahams of Australia because he basically would take Jay's stuff and put his face on it. Was that kind of, that almost, he took modelling to the nth degree.
Yeah. I've had a couple of mentors like that too.
Yeah, look, and look, each to their own. And although that hasn't necessarily been my path, there have been periods in my path where I've just gone, right, if I don't know how to do it, just copy somebody else. And that's great for a period of time. But if you don't innovate from there, then, ultimately there's nowhere to go except being, a replica, and nobody really wants to be a replica. But Pete, he was great at the time, and I'm very, very grateful to have had him come into my life and to get the mentoring and training that I did.
Awesome. Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, that would have been particularly exciting. So, what was your mindset as you were working through all that? I mean, to a large extent, it would have just been sort of strap yourself in and hold on. But what were some of the things from a mindset perspective that really pulled you through?
Mate, intuitively, you hit the nail on the head. It was very much strap yourself in. Say goodbye to Kansas, Dorothy, that kind of thing. But look, the biggest thing I really struggled with was reconciling what my passion was. Yep. Because at the time I thought my passion was money. I thought my passion was making money. Yep. And this was a tremendous period of awakening for me. Because I made a tremendous amount of money for a very young man. I think in my first year in that deal, of that $8 million that we made, myself and my business partner, we probably took about 1.6 out of that business. Awesome. So and I was 26 or 27 at the time. And so I'd never seen that kind of money before. For me, I'd always thought that I wanted money, but I never knew why. And I think it was born of the fact that I grew up in, a single mum on a pension. She did her best to get by, and we never really realized that we didn't have a lot of money. But the fact was that, I used to look at kids around us who had things and toys and stuff and go, wow, why don't we have that kind of stuff? And I never really was resentful about it. But as I became older, I started to realize I wanted to make money. And a little bit of a flashback here, through school. I used to work a job before school. I used to work a job after school. I used to work a job on the weekends. I was managing a gym from 5 in the morning until 8:45, where I'd sprint to school to get there on time. In the afternoons, I was working at Sizzler as a chef, where I'd basically take it through to 1 o'clock in the morning to do clothes. And then on the weekends, I was working as a landscape labourer. And so most weeks I was making more than my teachers were. Wow. So I was very driven to make money, but I never really had a reason why. And as a result, I was very lost. It's one thing to be driven to make money, but if you've got no reason to make money, you can get yourself in a whole shitload of trouble, which I did in my younger years. But I never resolved that. And when I was with Pete and Adam and Dino, I was making this phenomenal amount of money, and I had this huge void inside me where I thought something was missing. And so my first thought was, well, maybe I've always wanted a sports car. So I went out and bought myself a beautiful convertible sports car. I was like, I still feel pretty shitty. Don't feel any. I felt good for a week. I'll be honest. I felt pretty good for a week. Pranced around, the Gold Coast where I was living at the time with my roof down in the middle of winter, freezing my tits off. And then after that, I was like, well, okay, I still feel like crap. Maybe it's a really nice house. So, I got myself the big 5-bedroom house in the canals, with the 4-car garage. And, I thought, well, maybe that'll make me happy. And it did, probably for about, a month. Maybe I was really happy. And then I just got even more depressed. And I was making a lot of money. I had great friends. And then I thought, well, maybe what's missing is I need a woman in my life, and not just any woman. I wanted to be that guy who had the most beautiful woman. So I started dating different models, and I started seeing a model that I thought was quite nice, and she was fantastic. She was a cheap date. All she ate was salad. And so I realized when I started dating a model that, I called her in hindsight, she was a lovely girl. And I don't mean this and I won't mention names because I don't mean to be critical, but she was like a seashell. She was very beautiful on the outside, but she was empty in the middle. There was nothing inside her. And that was a great opportunity for me to realize, okay, well, it's not a car, it's not a house, it's not a girl. What am I missing? And, I won't go down this path because that's not what this interview is all about, but it was from there that,
well, I'm certainly curious as to what you decided that your passion was, that's for sure.
Well, put it this way. I went on a sabbatical after I ended that deal. After that deal was ended abruptly, I went on a 12-month sabbatical, and I traveled the world, and I went to the most spiritual sites on the planet. The Cradle of Life in Africa, Machu Picchu in South America, in Peru. I went to some of the deeply religious sites in Turkey, and I was basically trying to find myself. And what I was looking for was interesting. I thought I was looking for it in money, and then I was looking for it in a car, then I was looking for it in a house or a girlfriend, and then I was looking for it all over the world. And what I realized, what I was looking for the whole time was actually inside. I was looking for a sense of peace. And that's not something that you can find in any one of those things, and that's not something that money can give you. That's something that must be discovered inside, and that's an internal journey that making a lot of money at an early age enabled me to do. And I'm very grateful, I should say, because if I hadn't, if I was still one of those, people on the treadmill that were, running 1,000,000 miles an hour, I'm not able to get off, just hoping one day if I make a lot of money, then I'll be happy. I don't think a lot of people realize that money isn't the answer. Money is a magnifying glass. If you've got a lot of problems now, you're going to have a lot more when you have more money. Money is one of those things that once your basic needs are met, it then gives you the opportunity to really pursue what's important to you.
Yeah.
And that was a tremendous gift to me by making money at a very early age, to be able to go, right, what is important to me? What are the important things to me? And, spirituality has become a very big part of my life.
Wow.
I'm not religious, but I am deeply spiritual. I meditate on a fairly regular basis. I fast once a year for a range of reasons. And, I think there's a lot to be discovered when we take the inner journey, especially about deal making. And I know this sounds nothing like deal making, but when and I talk about this, when I speak, is, consciousness is one of the key ingredients of successful deal making, of successful business, because the more conscious you become, and I'm not talking about this in terms of, okay, sit under a Bodhi tree and find enlightenment. I'm talking, although that is a aspect of it, when you do become more aware, when you do become more conscious, and you use things like meditation and clean living as a way to find that, your awareness expands, and your ability to manage emotion becomes greater. And the two greatest traits or skills that anyone can have in a deal-making situation is, number one, being able to manage their emotional state.
Yep.
The person who can't manage their emotions is the one that is going to get taken advantage of.
Yep.
Okay. And the second one is being able to see all of the angles of potential possibility in that deal.
Yes.
So if one door shuts, because that's the thing, when it comes to deal-making, when someone says no, they're not saying no to the offer. They're not saying no to the deal. They're saying no to that presentation of that deal. They're saying no to that, the language that you're using. They're saying no to the inclusion. They're saying no to the structure. They're saying no to, they're not saying no to the entire, okay, let me put it in a different way. They're not saying no to the concept. They're saying no to how you package the deal in that moment. And as a deal maker, where conscious comes in is being able to, when someone says no, not go, oh, okay, well, they're obviously not interested in the concept. They're obviously interested in the concept, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. They're just not interested in the way that I've packaged it in this moment.
Yeah.
And when you introduce conscious into the conversation, you're able to look at it and ask questions and see tiny cues and pick up on little throwaway lines that enable you to repackage the deal in the moment, not 3 weeks later, not a week later, not 2 days later, but how do you repackage things in the moment so you can get the deal done now? And that's what a deal maker is to me, is someone who can see all of the options, all of the angles, and basically go through a checklist of presenting it in different ways in order to finally get that. That's like a code on a combination lock. And that's what deal making is. It's about finding the right combination that opens the vault or opens the lock that allows the wealth to be exchanged.
Yeah, and I think that's just such a massive distinction in terms of being more centered and having more vision in any given moment, which is, in terms of how you've talked about consciousness being important in that, because it becomes less about you and more about what you're seeing around you and what you're noticing in the client that you're speaking to and all those type of things.
And John, you nailed it again. And that's what deal making is all about. It's about giving people what they want. It's not about getting what you want. It's about giving people what they want. And as a consequence of the way that you structure the deal, you get everything that you want. But it's not about you. And this is where a lot of people fall down in deal making, because they try and make it about themselves. And as a result, they suffer when they present deals or they pitch deals or they close.
So was there any of that we've just talked about that you learned along the road with Adam and Peter? Oh,
look, again, so much. And there would be too much to mention in this one interview. But I suppose what I can say is it wasn't so much what I learnt when I was in that period, because again, this wasn't the biggest deal of my life. This was the most pivotal deal of my life.
Yes.
And the reason I say it was the most pivotal deal of my life, because that deal put me on the path.
Yeah.
That deal put me on, like Peter introduced me to meditation. Peter introduced me to fasting. Peter introduced me to copywriting, and Adam introduced me to leadership and personal development, and speaking as an art form, not as speaking as a passion and as an art form, not just as a process or a technique, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And so I had two incredible mentors that opened up, two very different doors for me. And what's interesting now is, Pete doesn't meditate. Pete was very much when we were working together, no alcohol, meditation, fasting, clean living, all that jazz. And now, I've gone that way, and now Pete's at the opposite end of the spectrum, which is really interesting. He's now eating meat again. He's now drinking alcohol. He hasn't meditated in probably a good 10 years since I've met him, since I've seen him probably. It's just interesting how, life's changed. Things move.
Exactly. So before we leave that particular example, I just had one last question. What do you think was the common denominator that made that business work? What was the thing, the pattern, the theme, the thing that you just seemed to...
Let me give it to you in three. It was team.
Yep.
Talent. So it was the team, the way that we worked together, because 4 big personalities and egos, but for a time we worked very well together.
Yep.
Talent. You had everyone that brought, very complementary. There was a little bit of overlap, but very complementary talents together. And positioning. The thing that really made us strong in that space was the way that we positioned the deals.
Yeah.
We used a lot of third-party authority. Like we never did direct transactions where we never tried to sell to someone. We used very much an application process whereby people had to apply for an opportunity and in that application, that was an interview. And people would sit down and expect to be sold, but we wouldn't sell them. We'd actually interview them and get them to convince us why we should take them on as clients. And that was a strategy that is now used, a lot more, but back then it was very much unheard of.
Yeah.
The reverse sell, some people call it, or in extreme cases, neg selling or negative selling. And we never did a lot of negative selling, but we did reverse sell. We did, and that positioning enabled us to do a lot of transactions very quickly, effortlessly, because we weren't trying to convince anyone to do anything. We were reversing the deal and getting them to convince us. And to this day, that's how I do, a lot of because I now have not just the education company, and I have a corporate advisory business where we actually do, deals, everything from raising capital through to the execution of capital acquisitions. And, even in my business in my education company, we have, high-end consultancy services and high-end client services. And whenever we sell, I now use what I learned there, not as a strategy, but as a way of living. And what I mean by that, it's one thing to use it as a strategy and position position it to reverse sell because it's a tactic, but it's another thing to really mean it and to actually really mean that no, you actually have to convince me why I should take you on as a client. This isn't just something. And
it's not just some cheesy tactic. It's
no.
It's a way to protect us, make sure we don't get funky clients. Yeah.
And back then, it was a tactic.
Yeah.
But now it is a way of life for me because I'm so protective of my space. I'm so protective of my time that I don't want to work with people unless they can convince me and give me a really bloody good reason why. Because if I have to convince them, then, if there's ever a problem, they're always going to be thinking, wow, he convinced me. Versus if they convince me, if there's ever going to be a problem, there's going to be a lot more responsibility on both sides because everybody knows what they're getting into in the first place. And I'm very big on using all of the downfalls of the deal and putting them on a platter in front of everyone because that alone, and a lot of people won't do that in a deal-making environment. They won't put all the negatives of the deal out. I am so contrarian. I'll put every single negative on the table because that in itself inspires high levels of trust. And that trust is oftentimes one of the most important ingredients that will get the deal across the line. And people will do it and see all the negative, and they'll do it because they trust you and they trust that being in business with you will be the right thing. Versus, you might tell them a few things that they get a sense and intuitively know there's something you're not telling me here, and that might kill the deal. And oftentimes it will.
I love that. Put all the negatives on the table. And the other one that I feel really strongly about is this mindset where people need to be closed hard and dragged kicking and screaming across the line to do business with you. It makes my skin crawl. And mainly because I just know how destructive it can be when you get somebody who has had to have been convinced against their better will or better judgment. They they become a nightmare client, and two, they'll never refer anyone and subject anyone that they know to that experience.
Exactly. And look at the broader implications as well, John. And again, you hit the nail on the head, but if you look at the broader implications, what does that create culturally? When you look at that high pressure, hard closing stuff, that is what I call dysfunctional deal making. Dysfunctional deal making or dysfunctional selling.
Yep.
And dysfunctional deal making and dysfunctional selling over a period of the last 30 or 40 years has produced dysfunctional buyers. People who actually, as a result, don't function properly because they're again, let's classify really quickly. Once upon a time, the salesperson would tell them anything and do anything and intimidate in order to get the deal. And then that person would go home and get their ass kicked. And they go, right. And you do that 5 or 6 times, they start to equate buying equals pain. And those people who sell to me are lying to me because I'll get home and my wife will tell me the truth and I'll then feel very remorseful. And so as a result, buyers have evolved to lie to sellers.
Yeah.
Because they want to protect themselves. They don't want to tell you the truth. They don't want to tell you I'm not interested. They don't want to tell you this is not for me. They want to tell you, look, let me speak to my wife, or let me think about it, or some other cock and bull story that they come up with. Or they won't actually tell you that they'll lie to you and say, I don't know, I don't have those problems. I have these problems, hoping that you don't solve these problems so that they'll let you go. And what happens when you've got buyers that dysfunctionally inform the person who's doing the deal or the seller? That's when you amplify the potential for misalignment because you're now not telling me the truth. I've now sold you something based on what you've told me. You bought it, but now I've sold you something that you don't need because you weren't honest with me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that dysfunctional process, it just doesn't work. And that's where there is a need for a dramatic shift in deal psychology, deal making and sales psychology required that enables people to be open, enables people to be honest, but also, because when you're open and honest, it doesn't make it more difficult. It forces you to become a better communicator. It forces you to find the angles that turn that negative into a positive and to be a genuine positive, not just a tactic, as an example. I
couldn't agree more with you. I feel very strongly about that. That could be the subject for another podcast in and of its own, most definitely. So we did talk more at the start of in the what did you call it? The pre-interview banter.
The pre-interview chat, I think it's called in the industry.
The pre-interview chat about the biggest deal that you didn't go ahead with, and that there were some lessons there. Can you touch on that again for us?
I can. I can't name names in this one.
That's right.
Reason being, it is a client that I did a deal with that produced a multiples of 7 figures. But then a bigger deal presented itself as a result of the first deal, and I turned it down. Now, this was really an intoxicating deal. Like, it was a huge celebrity brand. Like, I'm talking a household name. The brand was involved in everything from, product all the way through to the movie industry. The brand had its own movie that was represented at the highest level in Hollywood, from production through to talent. It was also, let's just say, it was nominated for, a few awards in its time as well. So the seduction was huge. The potential for the opportunity was massive. But, the challenge for me was an ethical one. It was a moral one. It was an intuitive one. It was one where I just knew if I did this deal, I was going to get, to use the French, I was going to get screwed. And I didn't do that deal. And as a result, I saved myself a lot of time, a lot of heartache, and probably a lot of health issues as well.
And did as you watched the train continue on down the track, did you see anything that reaffirmed the decision that you'd made?
Multiple things, because the person who did end up doing the deal was actually, someone in my network. And, I used to hear about it on a very regular basis, all the issues that were coming up, all the challenges that were coming up, everything from, talent management through to media management. And these weren't small issues. These were big, big issues. And as I said, I don't want to give too much away because I've already given more away than I feel comfortable with.
Sure.
Because I don't want this to come back and bite me. But, as that train went down the tracks, it went strong, it went fast, but it eventually went sideways. And by sideways, I won't actually, no, that's not completely true. It wasn't a complete train wreck, but put it this way, the train has slowed down significantly. And, there's still a lot of luggage on board.
Good analogy.
Yeah.
So so with the inner work that you've done, do you think that you would have made a different decision 10 years ago had you been presented with the same opportunity?
Oh, absolutely. It would have been all ego, would have been all profile, would have been all, how is this going to make me look? How is this going to position me?
So you could very well have jumped on, yeah?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, it would have been, I had so many people saying, you idiot, what are you doing? This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Just do it. And I was just like, I can't. Because every time I don't follow my intuition, I get smashed.
Yeah.
Well, put it this way, the more in tune I've become, the more aligned I've become, the more I don't listen to my intuition, the more I get smashed, either physically, it manifests in some kind of a health issue from all the stress, mentally, in terms of the stress that's created by, getting into a deal where you're locked in and you're now going, shit, I don't want to be here. How do I get out of it? And you can't get out, because I'm very much of my word. And if I say I'm going to do something, I do. And, I've been in situations before where you feel this commitment obligation where you've made a commitment and now you feel obligated. And, it's very easy for people to renege on their commitments. Shit, you and I have seen that happen on a very regular basis. But it takes a very rare type of person who can follow through on their commitments. And I like to live on that side of the fence, which makes me very cautious now and very careful. Cautious is not the right word. Very careful about making sure that I listen to my intuition or my gut or my instinct or whatever you want to call it, when I'm considering any deal. And there is so much science now available about intuition and, what that is as a product. The quantum mechanics and particle physics have gone a long way. They've given us so much information on understanding that, intuition is it's a tangible force. It's a tangible, almost a product that everybody has access to, but, not everybody either listens to it or can hear it, depending on what's going on in their head upstairs.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, look, that's just, I mean, so many lessons on so many levels, in terms of the second example, and always why I asked that second question. Tell me about a deal that you didn't go ahead with or that you didn't get, and what did you learn from that? And there's almost more to be learned from the deals that we don't do than the ones that we do, and the successes that we have.
Or the deals that we do that we know we shouldn't have done, and then we learn lessons from the realization of why we knew at the time we shouldn't have done them.
Exactly.
And there's been many, and there'll be. I'm sure I'm not immune, and I'm sure nobody is immune to making wrong decisions. And it's also important enough. I know we're in closing here, that I'll say that sometimes our intuition drives us to do a deal that goes pear-shaped. And this has been big for me. This has been a huge, huge awareness for me. Sometimes our intuition drives us to do a deal that goes pear-shaped, and we think, oh my God, my intuition was wrong. And, for a very long time, that made me question my intuition and question my gut instinct. But what I started to realize is sometimes your intuition will give you a directive or a direction, say, do this deal, and that deal will go pear-shaped. But the reason that your intuition directed you to do that deal was so that you could learn the lessons from it going pear-shaped for the next deal that was coming.
Exactly.
And, that's a really important thing for people to take away, is just because you get the intuition to do a deal goes pear-shaped doesn't mean your intuition was off.
No.
It just means that your intuition has a longer perspective than you do.
There was a lesson that needed to be learned, yeah.
In order for you to take that next deal. And that next deal may not have been 2 weeks, might be 2 months, might be 2 years, shit, might be 10 years down the line. But that's where perspective is important, and being able to see the balance in all the deals we do.
Yeah, awesome. Well, mate, again, mindful of the time, but I did have one last question for you. In fact, two if we can squeeze them in. The first one is your top 5 books, and perhaps even there's some resources that you can recommend, either to fine-tune intuition or just the 5 key books that have really shaped, your philosophy and your career direction.
Oh, shit. Okay. I'm going to, in no specific order, I'm just looking at all the books on my desk that just happen to be here right now, so this is helpful. Pitch Anything as a deal-making book in terms of understanding the psychology of human interaction in a deal environment is critical.
It's beauty.
So Oren is actually spoken at one of our mastermind events. He's become a client. He's a phenomenal guy.
Awesome.
He's a real deal, totally incredible guy. Another book that I have really, really enjoyed is Drive by a guy called Dan Pink. What science knows and business don't implement. It basically is a really thorough and in-depth research into motivation and the real things that motivate people and the assumptions that people use that people think that are used for motivation. Another book that I'm very fond of is The Way of the Superior Man, which is by a guy called David Dieter.
Yep.
That is a very left of field, left of center fringe type book that is very much around masculinity and femininity, and it's really helpful for men and women to read, to really get an understanding about their core energies as a man or a woman, and understanding that manifests in the physical world in very different ways, because a lot of people get very torn about equality when it comes to men and women, and I'm very much for equality in many areas, but we've also got to understand that men and women are fundamentally two very different animals, although we're the same species. That's where men are from Mars, women from Venus kind of really comes from, and understanding that those energies, those frequencies that are at the core of either a man or a woman have a fundamental impact on how we view our world and how we live our world. And if you try and live your world as a man when you're a woman, and you try and live your world as a woman when you're a man, it creates a huge level of dysfunction. And this book really nails that. Another great book is The Self-Aware Universe, by a guy whose name is longer than I can actually pronounce. He's an Indian physicist. And it really just looks at the understanding of the connection between ourselves and the universe. And again, I'm not trying to get all voodoo and woo-woo here, but it really is a great explanation in terms of understanding that how we interact with our environment at a physical level has energetic ramifications that actually affect other physical aspects of our world or our universe. There's an old saying, when you change the way you look at the world you look at changes. And that was a term that was used in psychology for a very long time to help people change their perspective. But what we now know is when you change the way you look at the world physically behaves in a different way. And this is what quantum mechanics has proven to us. And quantum mechanics was considered very, random. And, I think even Einstein wasn't a fan of quantum mechanics because he thought it was, spooky action at a distance because of its randomness. And a lot of scientists don't like it because it is completely unpredictable. But what, science has been able to tell us is, matter at a quantum level behaves differently depending on the conscious that is observing it. And that for the longest time is what frustrated and baffled physicists all over the world, because they would be trying to, predict the way that matter or energy would behave at a quantum level, and they couldn't predict it because it was so random. But what they soon discovered, or not so much soon, but over a period of time, is that energy that they were observing at a quantum level behaved differently depending on who was watching.
Wow, and it's bizarre.
That gives huge insights into, concepts such as manifestation and, God forbid, even using terms like the law of attraction. There is, we are beings that are held together, with electromagnetism, and we have electromagnetic properties that can be amplified and diminished and attuned to attract and repel certain, forms of other forms of matter or vibration, which is all matter really is on some level. really fascinating stuff. And that's what I've learned. The more I learn about quantum mechanics and particle physics, the easier life gets for me.
Yeah.
And if there was one really great book or spiritual book that I would suggest, I think I'm over 5 now, Autobiography of a Yogi, a really profound journey into self.
Awesome.
And another one, I Am That. But both of those are like Bibles. They're huge books.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Did that answer the question? Was there another part of that? Was there a part?
That really? did. Or anything that people can, any place that people can go to find out more about what you do and your programs?
Look, the best place to go would be kerwinrae.com.
Yep.
It's very phonetic, KERWINRAE.com. There's a whole bunch of stuff we can give away. If you're interested, we can even give you a link for some special stuff for the people who listen to this podcast.
Awesome. Well, yeah. I mean, if you've got that on hand, that's perfect. Yeah.
Not a problem. Of course.
Perfect. And so the other thing I was going to ask you, just in closing, is anyone else that you think I should have on the show?
Oh, good question. Dealmaker. 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 Who is a great dealmaker? Do you know who would be a great guy to get on your show? Would be Reuben Buchanan.
Yeah.
Reuben Buchanan. Are you familiar with who he is?
No.
He's been one of the guys. He's a corporate advisor.
Yeah.
He's been one of the very key behind a couple of businesses. One's Cubiotics, which is basically a natural cancer cure that has been taken through many rounds of funding, and I think he's raised now over $100 million for them.
Wow.
And also the Martin Jetpack. He was one of the key financial. Well, he wasn't the financier, but he was the corporate advisor behind that listing,
yep.
Which basically took that company from very small valuations. I think it's now in $100+ million, probably even more valuation now. And he's put together some incredible deals. And he cherry picks his deals and he executes like a madman. And he's high end. He's at the higher end of town.
Yep.
But he's just very straight down the line, very no bullshit, and surprisingly effective with the way that he does his deals.
Yeah, awesome. Is he an Aussie?
He is an Aussie, Sydney based.
Gotcha. I'll try and track him down. Good stuff. Well, mate, thank you so much for being on the show, Kerwin, and I'll find out what that link is from you, and I'll include that in some of the details on this particular episode. So, mate, thanks again. Much appreciated.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me, mate.
You've been listening to Master Dealmaker's Secrets with John Blake. Subscribe to get more in-depth strategies to maximize your sales process with new episodes every week. And double your inquiry to sale conversion with the lead flow you already have. Go to johnblakeaudio.com for his exclusive free no-fluff audio training and companion PDF guide.